Welcome to the ADKAR Change Management Model. ADKAR, A-D-K-A-R, represents awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. Unlocking Change, the ADKAR Model. Welcome to this presentation about ADKAR Model. In this session, we will explain in detail how this model can help you lead successful change management initiatives. I'm a firm believer that people don't hate change. People hate rapid change. They hate change that they're not prepared for. What ADKAR Change Management Model does is make them aware, prepare them, and actually have them embrace change. When done correctly, this ADKAR model can make a change in your organization that would take years in other organizations, but it has to be done properly. As I said before, this change model is a systematic approach to change management that outlines 5 clear stages of change management. A stands for awareness, D is for desire, K is for knowledge, A is for ability, and the R is for reinforcement. By focusing on these stages, leaders can empower their team to adapt, to change more effectively, and with less resistance. Awareness, why change is necessary. So in this whole process, there's 5 key parts to the ADKAR Change Management Model. Now, I recommend if you're going to have any significant large changes in your organization, you roll it out over a 5-week period. Now, the reason I say 5-week period is because there's 5 key components to this change model. That will give you 1 week for each one of these components. Now, if you've got to do something rapidly, I would do it in a week, and you'd have 1 day or 5 separate days to roll this out properly. Where the problem typically is most organizations roll new changes out so rapidly that people get upset and pull back. If you take your time and do this in a systematic way, you're going to get a much better response to the changes that you want to make. So A for awareness is the first one. Now, ultimately, you would want to do this for a week in this program moving towards a change. Now, if you have to do each day a separate component of this, you'd have 1 day to do awareness. And what the awareness is you're essentially doing a self-assessment. You're encouraging individuals and the team to assess the need that changes have to be done. You want to communicate and have openness, create a sense of urgency about the changes that need to be made, and provide clarity and context behind the reason for the change. You need to explain in full detail and have openness as to why the change is happening. Again, you're going to need to involve the team in the planning process by providing an overview of the change and how it'll affect them. If you get the team involved, they're going to embrace this change more because they're involved in it. They're going to have some say of how this is rolled out. This is a key component of awareness, is really focusing on that engagement and making them feel as they're a part of this change and not being swept over by a wave of change. And then you've got to focus on the culture. You've got to encourage a culture of openness and learning so the individuals in the team can respond positively to the change. So this is where you're going to talk about when this change occurs. I need your feedback. I want you to be honest with me on this change so we can make this successful. Again, you're creating a culture that the entire team's involved in this change, and that's going to make the change much smoother. And then we're going to go on to desire. You're going to need to create a desire, developing an enthusiasm for this change. So if you've done a great job, made them aware of why the change is happening, this is where you can get them actually excited about it, celebrate the fact that this change is coming, and have the desire to change. For leadership, you got to engage with the team with a clear vision for the change, explain the benefits of the change and how they align with the organization's goals. So again, very clear expectations of how the company envisions this change happening. Like I said, you want to celebrate and encourage celebration in the culture around the success and the milestones of this change coming through. Third is the K, or knowledge. You have to provide the necessary information for them to make the change. You've got to educate your team about this change. And the first step in the knowledge part of this is educate. You've got to provide transparency in the process and make the changes visible and easy to access. Provide training, coaching, and curriculums to upskill individuals and to prepare. The second part of knowledge is collect feedback from the participants and ensure that their questions and concerns are addressed. If you don't address their questions, they're going to make up their own answers. They're going to say, the organization is doing this to pay me less and make more money, when in fact that may not be the case. So you've got to essentially write your story so they don't write it for you. So address each and every concern, as even the most smallest concern, you need to address it. Transparency, we've talked about this already. You've got to be transparent throughout this entire process. Provide transparency and build trust. They need to know that you're giving them the straight scoop on this, and that this is something that they can get behind and make happen. Ability, develop of skills and abilities to implement the change. Now, this one's very difficult. There have been changes in technology in organizations that certain parts of the workforce just do not have the skills or the ability to handle that change. This is where you're going to have to identify, does your organization have the ability to make this change? Does every teammate on the team have the ability to make this change? And you're going to need to empower individuals to make their own decisions and provide the support and guidance that they need to succeed. You're going to need to explain and give them the knowledge of what you're going to do, but ultimately they're going to have to decide, are they up to the task? Do they have the will to get the training and accept the changes and move forward with the organization? Number two, you really want to create ownership, encourage ownership of the process by allowing the individuals to make decisions and provide them with the resources to succeed. I'm a firm believer you need to set people up for success. Too often I see organizations trying to put a round peg in a square hole. They have an opening in a management position, and because they can't find anyone that's ultimately qualified for the position, they try and force someone else into that position. That never works out. You're setting the person up for failure. I really think you need to set everyone up for success. And the way to do that is give them ownership, allow them to make small changes to their routine or their process that's going to allow them to accept this new change, and they can feel like they're a part of it, and actually they were part of the change itself. And then you need to design a process that allows individuals to test and adjust and change as they go through this process. This may be the most difficult part of the change model, is the ability, and to recognize that some people may not have the ability to change. And then reinforcement. This is so very important, and this is just like in any type of training. The more positive reinforcement that you give your team, the much better results you're going to get. Too often we have leaders that do negative reinforcement. So what I suggest is when you make the change and you roll this change out, find quick wins, find people doing the right thing. Let's not fall back on that style of management where you catch people doing things wrong. It's much wiser to catch people doing the right thing as opposed to the wrong thing. So I recommend you do positive reinforcement. Encourage a sense of pride and ownership in the changes. Recognize people that have successfully made the change and embraced the change. Hold those people up as champions of the change. You have great players or employees that work for you today that you know that the rest of the team looks up to. Give them ownership of being the champion of this program. Those people that are high will, high skill, that have a following. If you give them the ability and you empower them to take ownership of this and explain this ADKAR change management model to them and say, I need you to help me out accomplish this change, you're going to get much more buy-in from the team. And you're also giving that valued employee ownership of a program where they can feel very much valued and start learning coaching skills themselves. So reinforcement becomes very important during this whole change process. So in conclusion, really the ADKAR model is somewhat simple. You want to break out whatever period of time you have. If you have 10 days, there's 5 components to this model. If you have 10 days, you're going to want to spend 2 days on each component. Or if you feel like ability might be your biggest challenge, you may want to spend 3 or 4 days on that and less time on awareness or desire. But you want to break it out evenly so there's a systematic way of rolling out this change. And I just want to summarize it real quickly. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make everyone aware that the change is coming and establish why the changes are required. Be transparent, explain to them completely, and tell them, I'm making you aware of this because this change is coming in the near future. The second part is desire. Develop enthusiasm for the change. Explain to them how that's going to improve both their lives and the company's lives and the workforce. Number 3, provide them all the knowledge that they need. People often get scared of change because of the unknown. That's where you really have to give them the knowledge so there are no unknowns. Allow them to ask as many questions as they have. This is why I like a 5-week period. When you roll this out, most people aren't going to think of a question right then and there. They're going to go home, they're going to talk about it with their spouses, they're going to mull it over, if you will, and come back several days later with questions. So really take the time to answer each and every question as best you can, be transparent, and if they have all the knowledge, that's going to help this change model work much better. And then what I've said earlier, ability, development of the abilities to implement this change. Can you upskill the employees to be able to do this change? Now, some change is very simple. It's a change in a process, or it's a change in paperwork, or a billing cycle. Those type of changes that this model will work very well with, very quickly with. Where it becomes difficult is when there's a change in technology. You may have an employee that's been with you for 10 years and has been doing the same job for 10 years. They're going to be scared of this change because they're very proficient at how they do it now, and this is new to them. Some people take a little while to make that change. Some people make it quickly. Some people will never be able to make that change. They just don't have the ability. This is where you're going to have to really test and find out what their will is to make that change. Now, I'm not saying they're not going to give it their best to make the change. There's people that just don't have the skill set to make the change. And you're going to have to find out what that ability is. And then 5, and the final is really reinforcement. And again, I want to focus on reinforcing the positives, not the negatives. So much is made of what people do wrong. I'm a firm believer, focus on their strengths, focus on what they do right, catch them doing things right, recognize them publicly. If you have to give them constructive feedback, you do that privately. You need to be a great coach to get these folks from where they are to where you want them to be. And that's through positive reinforcement. And then 6, which isn't in the ADKAR model, but it's everything that you do, you have to have a model of continuous improvement. You have to encourage the culture to continue to improve not only processes, but themselves, improve the communication, improve the feedback in the organization, improve the grow together sessions. Every organization can be looked at as a living, breathing organism. And you constantly have to be improving and moving forward, or the organization gets stale and dies. A perfect example is Sears. You know, when I was growing up, the Sears catalog was like 900 pages thick. You could literally buy anything you needed from Sears. And Sears had everybody's address because they were sending out these catalogs. As a matter of fact, at one point in time, Sears had a catalog in 25% of every home in the United States. Now, when there was a shift to online sales, Sears didn't embrace it. As a matter of fact, Sears looked at it and said, we'll continue to do what we've always done, and we are the #1 retailer by doing that. They didn't embrace the change, and there's multiple reasons for that. They may have felt like their workforce couldn't make that change. They may have felt that their infrastructure couldn't handle that change. I personally believe it was the vision of the leadership that had decided that that change wasn't important to them. And ultimately, they went from being the country's largest retailer to really shriveling up and going away because they didn't adapt to the changing market. There's a lot of companies that fall back on, we'll continue to focus on our core business, or we'll continue to do what we've always done. Well, I can tell you, technology and the world and the environment that we work in is changing so rapidly that you have to accept change and embrace it and realize that not all change is good. You may have to revise those changes, or you may have to go back to the old system, but you certainly have to embrace them and recognize that your business needs to continue to grow with the world. If not, you're going to be left behind. There's millions of mistakes out there that have happened. In retail, I can tell you so many that didn't embrace change. Sears was one. Kmart, Walmart and Kmart. Why did Walmart succeed and Kmart didn't? Walmart really embraced technology, where Kmart was behind the curve on technology. Look at Bed Bath & Beyond. Just recently has gone under. They refused to embrace online sales. They felt like it was more important to drive traffic into their stores than create a robust e-commerce business. And what happened is the Amazons of the world just ate up their business. If you could buy something on Amazon, have it delivered the next day from your house at the same or less than Bed Bath & Beyond was selling it for, why would you go to Bed Bath & Beyond? Why would you even go into the store? And what I find ironic is Bed Bath & Beyond felt like they were a brick and mortar business and couldn't embrace e-commerce. They didn't feel like that was their cornerstone of their business. And ultimately, when they went bankrupt, Overstock.com bought their name for $21 million because Overstock felt like their name was strong enough to carry the online name of Overstock.com. Overstock.com actually changed their name to Bed Bath & Beyond and are solely an online business. So it's funny how one set of leadership makes a decision or refuses the change in an environment that's constantly changing, and then another business leadership's vision is the complete opposite and embraces e-commerce sales and adapts the other company's name to do it. Just so funny how two different leaderships look at things two different ways, and ultimately, Bed Bath & Beyond paid the ultimate price for it. They went bankrupt. So I really think you need to engage in this ADKAR change management model. And anytime you see a change coming up, big or small, remember the acronym ADKAR and roll it out that way. I can tell you, you're going to get a much better reception from the change, much better buy-in, and ultimately you'll find that your employees somewhere down the road are going to say that they made the change. They've taken ownership and embraced it. And that's exactly what you want. Any good leader knows that if they feel like they've done it themselves, there's going to be much better buy-in, much better execution. So I want you to go out, coach them up, and make it a great day.